The subject of portals is the buzzword of the day in Washington these days. As you may all appreciate, Washington has a buzzword du jour which rotates about every 3-4 years. Portals are important because they are really coming in at the tail end of the service-oriented architecture. There are many ways of looking at portals, but I have tried to summarize it for you in terms of its computer science environment. And one has to look at portals as an aggregation vehicle. It is a way how you can take content and applications from many sources, particularly those who are on the web or on a private environment. And that means that you can serve to individuals their particular view of the internet environment. Portal is a web software, which is very important. It means that software is now migrating away from the fat PC, from the Microsoft environment, to the browser, because all you need for a portal is a browser, and then the application is then centrally managed by the provider of the internet services. So let me just give you a brief checklist of what portals offer to you. Again, it's a partial list, but it is an infrastructure, which is very important. Very often when you do an application, and you do an application for your own server, you have to develop your own infrastructure, your own communication protocol, or security protocols. In the case of Portal, all of that thing is done for you. The Portal basically provides a significant amount of code that does not have to be written. As an approximation, I could tell you an application that consists of 10,000 lines of code in a Portal environment would perhaps need only about 1,000 lines of code. The 9,000 lines of code would be then taken care of by a utility that is provided to you. Portals also allow users to arrange the components of what they want to look at. In other words, I will show you examples, but you want only a piece of the payroll system, or you want only part of the tax system, or you want part of the logistics system. You don't want to see everything. Part of the problems with most of the large enterprise applications like SAP is that you get everything. You get a menu of everything. In the Portal, you basically customize what you want to look at personally. Portals should be seen as the beginning of the migration of control over what you see in a computer from the programmer to the business user. See, once you have simplified the environment, it is possible to get displays which don't require a programmer to generate the picture of what you're going to see. It is a unified interface. One of the byproducts of portals is a so-called single sign-on. There may be hundreds or thousands of applications that you want to reach by means of Portal. You don't need passwords for each of those applications. You sign on to the Portal, do the necessary security clearance, and then you are in and have access privileges. Lastly, it is the beginning of what's called web services, which is really the future, which I'll be talking about in a distant future, about so-called thin clients. The basic problem of the current computer environment is that everybody has a mainframe on their desk, which is a Microsoft PC with 300 megabytes of operating systems, browsers, and applications. You can operate a Portal with less than 800 lines of code. That's the browser, a stripped-down browser, and then everything else is provided to you as a service. Now, why do we do it? The CIOs don't have money anymore to pay for programmers. I know all of you are working very hard to learn how to do coding, how to do program development. You hope that you will be able to earn a living by writing approximately 10 to 20 statements a day or something like that. That's the current debugged rate. That is not necessary anymore. The CIOs want to buy the thing prepackaged. The other advantage, of course, is so-called business process management. Once you get into the portal can actually give you a clue where to look for the answers. It can take you through a sequence. One of the best portals that I've seen is TurboTax. How many of you have TurboTax? That is a very clever application because it has business flow in it. It has workflow. It will take you through a sequence. It is clearly an example of the direction in which you go. Lastly, I will mention it is the beginning of launching virtualized applications. I will mention the word virtualize again. I will not discuss it today, but that is the next big frontier for computer science and for computer systems. By virtualization, you basically get rid of everything. You only have a piece of glass and a keyboard on your desk. Everything else is virtualized in a computing environment. Portal is the migration beginning of how to go in that direction. Now, why do we do it? The deployment costs are substantially less than for standalone applications. I would say they are maybe 50 to 80% less to do the same job. And that means that you get a good ROI, return on investment, which today, as money gets scarce, becomes very important. Computer business has become very risky business. The customer wants high ROIs because there is not enough time to wait for a year or two to get paybacks. You want very quick returns. And that means you can do rapid implementation. Now, to talk about rapid implementation in Washington is a very perilous undertaking because typically government projects, and particularly for the Department of Defense, may take 6, 7, 8 years, and then it may actually never finish. We are now talking about portal implementation, which are less than 6 months. Now, I thought I will give you a diagram of how the thing works. Now, this is a very highly simplified vision of what a portal is. The consumer on the left-hand side basically sees a piece of what the server number 1 produces, what server number 2 produces, and what server number 3 produces. So that means that you get an aggregation in front of the place where you want to use. In a combat zone, by the way, it doesn't have to be a PC. It can be a BlackBerry. It can be a Apple iPhone or whatever. It's a piece of glass that has logic behind it. And so the power of the portal is the ability to suck in 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes as many as 10 pieces and display them simultaneously. I will try a corporate view of what portals look like. And what you see here is that you have functions, HR, human resources, finance, customer service, etc. At the bottom, you have databases and logic. And what you want to do, you then extract out of it services, which is service-oriented architecture, so that you can then bring a process model, a budgeting model, a customer service model to the people who are involved in that particular function. Do you understand? This is how you work your way up from the bottom. See, in the old days, we used to just do this piece. Logic, data, logic, put it on the server and run an application. That was the way things used to be done. And by the way, we ended up with, you don't, okay. You cannot, you had 100,000 servers out there. This is a totally different picture. This is aggregating things. All right, enough of abstract stuff. Obviously, nobody felt courageous enough to comment about the prior diagram, but you will see my email at the end of the presentation, so if you still have courage, or even anonymously. By the way, there are such things as anonymous remailers. And that means that if you are really bashful, you can actually send me a question, and I will answer to the anonymous address. I will use the Army Knowledge Online portal as an example of what it works. And this is the top of the portal for Army, and then you have email, files, forums, groups, chat, forms, video, and white pages, buttons. And then you have workspace, sitemap, favorites. This is very important. My favorite means this is the image of the thing that I want to watch. So that is what, it's a generic portal available to 1.2 million people in the Army right now. So this is a very significant portal. And that means that you can then go into the portal and do what's called webmail. In other words, you can go from your machine or anywhere in the world. For instance, tonight I will go to the hotel and I will go to webmail. I will sign to a web provider and they will connect me through a browser to my email. And that means that I can now have an email. I do have an email account on the Army portal. I have inboxes, drafts, send, trash, and the usual stuff. And that's very important as an email utility. I can do file management on the Army portal. In other words, I can set up files, or I can go to somebody's files that have been posted and then go and get into the file and extract information from the file. I can do what's called instant messengers, which is becoming very popular. Hardly anybody answers telephone. I hardly remember anybody answering my phone calls. It's all done by instant messaging. And it's very effective. The thing which is peculiar to me, I dial a phone number, I get voicemail answer, well, Mr. So-and-so, blah, 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 is not available, please call back. And, people have all kinds of nice things. I hang up, my phone rings, the guy's calling me back. In other words, he's watching instant messaging. In other words, there's so much email going out, particularly with spam, that the instant messenger has become a sort of a filter for people. Then you can get cute. And that is video messaging. You have little scanning devices, and you can put out pictures to your sweethearts or whatever else you want. This has to be, of course, carefully controlled, but it's very, very, very popular, particularly for communications from Iraq. There's an enormous workload coming over from Iraq of people sending video messages. Some people make it their business daily to make sure they call up their sweetheart or wife or whatever. And you know, it's very effective. And then you have what's called web pages. There are thousands and thousands of web pages. Here is a web page of trying to get into G3 operations. This is not a very good slide, but you see there's a whole bunch of web pages there. You can go to your portal and then get to any web page that you're authorized to go to. The key, and this is really the beginning of where we're going in the future, is what's called the personal home page. You can now set up a portal which will give you your personal home page with your particular profile, with your particular news, with your particular insights. And that is extremely powerful because it starts going towards self-service, the kind of news that you're interested in, and notifications and whatever else you want to place as the picture. We find that about 100,000 people, that's the best we have, today have personal home pages, and they log in at least every 2 hours during the day to their personal home pages. They usually would have their email, they would have some news and gossip or whatever else they want to look at. This is very important. And this is the last slide giving you an example of what a portal is all about. The portal can act as an educational institute. It's today perhaps one of the largest educational institutes in the world. There are courses, languages available. There are certification programs. By the way, you join the army and you get all of this thing for free. I don't want to discourage you paying tuition, but one way of solving your financial problems is to go into army and get yourself a portal and continue your education. You get software, you can look at your military record. Things get always messed up. So this is one of the great opportunities for you to go into the personal records and see whether they in fact have information about you correctly. What is very important in this environment is the clicks. You see, one of the measures of how effective a web environment has to do, how many times do you have to click in order to get what you want? This is one of the strengths of Google. They are continually counting clicks. How many clicks somebody had to put in order to get to the answer that he was looking for. And we are now talking very often on these favorite pages, 2 to 3 clicks. Which means that if that's what you look at every day, you are going to get a very good response. All right, this was part 1. Let me now talk about concepts. Again, SOA comes in here. It's a network-centric architecture. It's using SOA methods. And the word SOA methods is a loosely described kind of a concept. It means information can come from anywhere or from a repository. The important thing is that the control over the data shifts towards the user, and therefore you don't have to go to the programming department to give you a display. You can actually control the display that you will be looking at. So what you have in a portal environment, you have a menu, and here is a sample menu. These are buttons. You know, in my view, there is an infinite number of buttons. Of course, everybody doesn't have all the buttons. Then you hit these buttons and you get that service. That's SOA already. but that's how you migrate in that direction. So an example of portal offering content services, search services, single sign-on services. So there is a whole set of services buried under the portal environment. And then you have mashups. A mashup is, by the way, you have to understand, in this crazy business we are all in, the language changes all the time, and people sort of take great pride of knowing the latest buzzword. So mashup, you know, if you take nothing away from this lecture, you can say, well, I can talk about mashups. Now, mashups are hybrid applications. By the way, that's the beginning of Web 2. That utilize information from multiple sources. They are so-called composite applications. And they have things, and by the way, I'm mentioning some, Yahoo Pipes, OpenCapo, Dappernet, and by the way, every week somebody invents another mashup. Let me give you an example of a mashup. The question that I asked was, locate events within 45 miles of New York in November of 2005. Now, this is a question that may have never been asked before and never will be asked again. Okay, this is a totally unstructured, unprecedented thing. And the question is, you want to know where they are, and it found that there are umpteen, about 8 major applications, and then you can refine it by price. And at the Tribeca Rock Club, if you care about that, there is some kind of a rock club event. There is a jazz night at the Baha'i Center, a turkey ball, which I'm sure I'm glad I missed, and extra cash fund this holiday, some kind of a deal available. And then you have a map, and it shows you where these things are on the map. And if you click then on E, it opens and it gives you the phone number and the address. Now that's a mashup. Do you now understand what a mashup is? Now I gave you a very simple mashup, but mashups are extremely important as part of combat presence. This is what our soldiers need. They need to be able to ask a positional position and get simultaneously display maybe of weapons, enemy positions, or availability of aerial vehicles, all together on the same display. And by the way, get that, and I left it open. This mashup that you see here was done in 0.04 seconds. Okay? I asked the question, and 0.04 seconds I got this display. Now, does this get you? Do you really understand what I'm talking? This is very, very significant. This is what is the kind of a system that we need in the Department of Defense. People have done mashups, for instance, about shopping. You want to find a washing machine of this characteristic available with a warranty in White Plains, New York, within 6 miles driving distance from Stanford. And you get a map, and you get a list of stores and their price list. That is available today, by the way. It's called Frugal. Not Google, it's Frugal. It's called Frugal. Anybody has tried Frugal? Oh, good, good. You know, you can make lots of money. I buy everything through Frugal now. It's it's very easy. So that means that brings you to Web 2, which is called social computing. which is another name. And that means that you are now giving people websites where information is organized by the end users, wikis, blogs, YouTube, Flickr, all of this new stuff that you spend your time on instead of doing homework. That was a joke. I got no reaction from anybody. And that means that you then link social pages so that you can get the display, and that means that information assurance in a defense environment that makes sure that these things are not misused. And it meets the demand of what's called the new workforce. The new workforce is the so-called millennium generation. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you know it or not, you are the millennium generation. You use the computer mostly as a hobby rather than for studying. There are some notable exceptions, I'm sure, here. But you spend the time on the computer in a very social kind of an environment, unless I'm mistaken and the students of GMU are very serious about computer science and don't pay any attention to any of this stuff. And then, of course, it's fun. The portals give you access to all sorts of fun. There's lots of fun out there. And the question is, how do you organize your portal so that you look at certain things which are fun to you? And that is the story of Portal. Okay, how do you do it then? What you do, you have to start building SOA services in the back as enterprise services. And then you have to set up a portal and set up software in the portal or out of the portal in a server that will then extract this complexity for your need. And here are the software vendors who are the leaders in the field. This is the current major leaders. There are about 50 small companies who do that. By far the most accomplished company is called BEA. That is, most of the portals today are done through BEA. Oracle just spent $7.2 billion buying BEA. And there's no financial justification for it except that now they have gobbled up one of the key resources for doing portals. There is a limping company called Microsoft SharePoint. It is a very elaborate system, dearly loved by the Air Force. It's expensive, and Air Force likes it that way. And then you have SAP. SAP has spent an enormous amount of money on it, but not getting any place. And then there's a little company called Vignette, who's really coming along very well. To do portals, you have to really get very strong compliance with standards, because when you go out of the portal and you have a browser, you have to be able to grab these things, and they have to be packaged in packets which have a handle on it that you can yank out. It's called WSRP. And I'm now getting into the technical innards, but I want you to know that if you want to start working on portals, you would have to dive into the software standard interface. Now, I'm sure you cannot see this, but I just want you to know that when you finally decide to do software development for a portal, you will submerge yourself in manuals which are 2-3 inches thick because of the various features which are available collaboration, integration, security, personalization, platform support, usability, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. It's a big tall order. If you think you can just walk over to your machine and say, Shazam, give me a portal, it's not going to happen. Now, it can be done, it's prepackaged, but it requires work. At this juncture, you will be wondering what's the difference between a website and a portal. A website is something that you put on the internet that is accessible, and it is a particular website, and it's only that particular website that you look at. So you can go to www.strassman.com and you will see only what Strassman put on his web page. If you have a portal, you can say, I have a GMU portal and I have chosen Strassman's speeches as part of my portal. Or I can say, I have a GMU portal and give me the latest Strassman GMU speech. And that will be part of all the other things that you want to have on the web page. So you have a whole set of services that you offer, that you deliver, data services, application services. It starts, as you move in it, it looks more and more as SOA as you progress. And then, of course, you have technical issues of platform neutral. You can put in legacy system, but that slows you down. So if you start transforming some of the handles on the inputs to the system, they have to be done in Java. You must have low latency. If you don't have low latency, which is less than 250 milliseconds, that's a quarter of a second, ladies and gentlemen, you are not playing the game the right way. So you have to go out now and do some procurement, and that means that you have to see whether you can buy a portal that serves your needs. And the answer, there is no such thing. There is no software package today that's going to last you. The only question that you have, am I buying a software package that will allow me to migrate with a minimum of cost? Most importantly, you want to buy your portal in components, in pieces. Nobody has everything. And buying a portal in pieces also gives you flexibility depending which way the future will go. You also must understand many of these companies get acquired. And therefore, one day you may find yourself with a portal that runs on Appian, and Appian isn't there anymore. So they go, well, what do you do then? Where do you get support? So there are technical issues which I don't want to dwell on, but I want you to understand that this is a tough order, requires lots of work. Lastly, and this is a detail, nevertheless I'm including, it's called portlets. One way of doing portals is to do portlets, namely that you do pieces. And you put them on the shelf as Java, and then whatever portal system you have will assemble these portlets and put them on the screen and do the display. Now, what is the problem with portals? The problem with portals is legacy systems. The existing systems are welded in by contractors into place. And that means it's very difficult to pull them out and move them somewhere else. In fact, the contractors have every incentive to make sure that their code is as welded into place as possible and not movable. So that means that you really have to start thinking about the way how you're going to migrate into portals. And the question that was asked before, well, how long does it take to get into a portal? The answer, portals are never done. It's a journey. You start with things which are utilities like email, and then you build other applications. The ultimate goal is interoperability with a minimum amount of rewrite. Remember, you will never have a totally interoperable environment as long as you have contractors in Washington, which is here with us to stay for a long time. By the way, those of you should understand that 78% of the DoD budget for IT is spent on contractors. Do you understand that? And there are thousands of contractors out there making a living, making sure that their code will not be movable. So this is why when you're coming in with Portal, it's not a cultural issue, it's a power issue. And you now have to start doing the things through rewrites and putting wrappers around some of the applications so that you have an old code, an old COBOL code, but then you put it around into a package, and then the cover of that thing is then transported. Now let me leave you with one which is my favorite, my old place. I was instrumental in starting this thing, which is as flashy a portal as you're ever going to see. This is the NASA. I want you to just go and log on to the NASA.org and just see the pretty pictures. I mean, and they move, and the thing jumps all over the place. I want you to know I got authorization to proceed with this portal a day before Christmas of 2002. And I had it implemented on January 31st, 2003. Can I repeat that? Now, I had unlimited amount of money, nobody messed around with me, and there were no changes. But day before Christmas, 2002 until January 31st, 2003. So it's one of my fond memories. If you go into portals, and particularly if the thing becomes big, you will have thousands of web pages, thousands of applications to keep track of. In other words, when you look at this NASA portal, you will find hooks going into 10,000s of pieces of information out there. To keep track of that, and particularly to make it possible for a group of people to work on the same portal. In other words, a single person cannot build a portal, even for a small organization. You need to distribute and delegate the editing roles for contributing to portals. And so now you need an operating system called CMS, Content Management System, which will allow you to manage the editorial contents of the page. You know, this is like you're trying to do the New York Times. The New York Times has a 4-hour deadline from the time they cut off the stories until they publish and they go to print. During that period, all the articles have to be slotted in, you know, into columns. They cannot be page overruns and so forth. The same thing in much greater complexity applies to a publishing portal. And you need CMS. And they coordinate the editing of a large number of contributors. I would say the NASA webpage today may have anywhere from 200 to 400 editors. So there is an editorial staff that controls who does what and assigns space in portlets where they go. But the actual writing of the release or the text and so forth is done by lots of people out there, including secretaries. It is a complex environment for editing and writing the text for a portal. And that means you must edit computer files, image media, audio files, electronic documents, and web contents. It must be used as an archive. You must understand whatever you put on the web page has to be archived. You must be able to show years later what the portal looked like at 3 o'clock on December 23rd, 2001. So you must be able to walk your portal back. It's called Wayback Routine. Anybody have heard about a Wayback Routine? In other words, you must be able to, as you write this portal, you must be able to walk your way back to see who said what, because there are legal liability issues involving in portal posting. It's like a newspaper. Who wrote that particular text? And who inserted it and who approved it? All has to be in the system. You are, it's a piece of work. It's a piece of work. Here is a small CMS. I'm using a CMS for my web page, although I'm the only contributor, but I'm really lost after a while. You know, I must have now maybe 5,000–6,000 things on my web page. So I keep track of it, and then you can buy a CMS system, cost you a certain amount of money. There's a number of vendors who sell the CMS system. It cost me quite a bit of money to do that. So portals cost money. Okay, where do we go? All right, Web 2. That's where we're going. The way we are going, we are giving people portals. So when they use the portals get better. So we are starting to put, I hate to use the term artificial intelligence, but that's what people use until they discover something else. Google gets smarter every time you use it. They learn from the insight and the requirements of how the thing operates. And that means that you are now dealing with an environment of harnessing collective intelligence. That's the direction and where we're going with portals. And I'm giving you some examples. Wikipedia is by far the most popular one. I'm sure you all used Wikipedia. And, you know, and then you have SourceForge, Flickr, and so forth. And then you have, of course, Project Holland, which now has been acquired by Oracle. And that means that people don't use portals anymore as a display. They use it as a collaboration mechanism. So I'm writing a page in a portal or an article in a portal, and I collaborate with others who work with me in making sure that this comes out right. My last comments have to do with DoD, which is where I spend my time now. And that is that we need portals very badly in DoD as a way of lowering cost and increasing interoperability. Frankly, as good as AKO or the Army portal is, it is still lagging behind industrial strength kind of capability, but catching up. And that means that we need to be able to include legacy applications and to permit the elimination of redundant solutions. And that means that the design of portal really becomes a sort of a cluster around which you start redesigning information systems in DoD. And that means that you have to start looking at virtualized data centers, because otherwise the current mess of servers, which maybe there's 100,000 servers out there, most likely more, cannot carry the system and give the kind of response time necessary. And that means that you are bordering now, step by step, to what thinkers have called knowledge management. So Portal then becomes a form of knowledge management and business intelligence. So it's more than just display like a glorified New York Times. Because there was a question about SOA and portals. SOA can be kick-started through portals. It's a journey in that direction. It makes it possible to build portal components. It provides the interface. And most importantly, SOA is forcing on you standards which don't exist today. Now let me tell you the bad news. The bad news is that from a security standpoint, increases security because it gives you single sign-on, but at the same time, it reduces the surface of attack or vulnerability. And when you have flaws in the components, they can then propel into the portal. And particularly so-called malicious web pages. And they reside on websites that belong to legitimate organizations who may not be aware of it. So let me just leave you with a comment about portals. They are great, they're economical, they're wonderful, and they're dangerous. And that means that whatever money you save in portals, and there are considerable saving, some of this money is to be carved out for information assurance. Because my time is up, my slide in conclusion says portals offer simplification of the infrastructure. It makes possible visible, usable results, and is the direction in which information system will be going in years to come, namely moving control over what you see on glass from the hands of what controlled it always before, which was the programmers, to the hands of the user. Thank you very much.